All right, so today we're taking a deep dive into how Microsoft is basically playing digital detective using honeypots. Ever feel like you're one step behind those threat actors?
It's really a fascinating example of turning the tables, using deception as a defense mechanism.
Yeah, it's like setting a trap so convincing that even a seasoned hacker wouldn't realize they've walked right into it.
And that's exactly what Microsoft is doing, building these incredibly realistic fake networks to outsmart even the sneakiest phishers.
And the best part, this isn't just some theoretical exercise. This is actually happening right now.
Right. And today we'll unravel exactly how they build these digital traps, what they've learned, and why it matters for anyone working in IT, especially if you're in cloud security.
Okay, so let's set the scene a little bit.
Mm.
It all started with a seemingly harmless domain name.
Yeah, one you might even recognize. It hosted some resources for developers, but when those resources were moved, the domain was essentially abandoned.
So it became what security folks call a dangling subdomain. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, so it's basically an open invitation for attackers. You see, these subdomains can be vulnerable, and in this case, someone actually used it to temporarily host a malware command and control center.
Wow, sneaky. So they were like setting up shop in an empty storefront.
Exactly.
So what did Microsoft do? Did they just shut it down?
This incident was a big wake-up call for Microsoft. They realized that any organization could have these dangling vulnerabilities, and traditional security measures might not catch them.
So they decided to turn this vulnerability into an opportunity.
Exactly. Enter the honeypot.
Okay, so instead of just shutting down the compromised domain, they decided to point it to their own network of honeypots.
And these aren't your average honeypots. We're talking about a massive, interconnected web of decoy systems, all designed to attract and trap malicious actors.
Wait, so they've got these fake systems set up that look totally legit?
Yes, precisely. And they're capable of simulating hundreds of vulnerabilities and supporting more than 30 different protocols.
So it's like a playground for hackers. But every move they make is being watched, analyzed, and logged.
You got it. Think of it like this. The more time they spend interacting with the honeypot, the more information Microsoft can gather.
And here's where it gets really interesting. These weren't just static pages, right? I mean, these attackers could actually poke around, try to trigger vulnerabilities, run commands, the whole 9 yards.
Exactly. The honeypots were designed for high interaction, to lure attackers in and keep them engaged.
So they're not just watching the attackers, they're actively engaging with them, learning their tactics, understanding their tools, and all the while, these attackers have no idea.
None whatsoever. It's like next level espionage. And all of this data, every keystroke, every command, every attempt to escalate privileges, it's all meticulously logged and analyzed.
That is incredible. So what did they actually DO with all that data? So they're gathering all this intel, but it's not just going into a black hole, right? What are they actually doing with it?
Well, for starters, they're using it to make their own products more secure.
Right, of course.
But it doesn't stop there. They also share what they learn with the world, releasing information about emerging threats, collaborating with security teams across industries.
So they're basically creating a playbook based on how attackers are really behaving in the wild, which I guess is the whole point, right?
Exactly. They're turning the tables. But here's the really interesting part. They didn't just wait for attackers to stumble upon their traps.
Okay, now you've got my attention. What did they do?
They started creating these really convincing honeypot tenants.
Hold on, tenants? What do you mean? Like fake users?
Kind of. More like fake companies, with thousands of simulated user accounts. Each one had a unique domain name, internal communications, file sharing, you name it.
Wow. So they built these entire fake companies online, complete with employees and everything.
Essentially, yes. It was all a carefully constructed illusion.
Okay, that's pretty clever.
Yeah.
But how do you actually lure attackers into a fake company?
The phishing sites. They started feeding the credentials of these fake tenants into phishing sites.
So those websites that try to trick people into giving up their passwords.
Exactly. Especially the ones targeting Microsoft environments. So the phishing site, thinking they snagged a real user, would then try to log in with the honeypot credentials.
And they just fell for it, really.
Hook, line, and sinker.
Uh-huh.
Because these honeypot tenants were so convincing, the attackers thought they'd hit the jackpot.
Amazing. So how effective was this? Did they actually catch anyone?
Oh, yeah. They were monitoring tens of thousands of phishing sites.
Wow.
And they fed honeypot credentials to a good portion of them. And for the real targets, the humans behind the keyboards, they got them.
So what happens once the attacker is inside one of these fake companies?
That's when the real fun begins. Microsoft can track their every move, their IP address, what browser they're using, their location, even if they're using a VPN.
Talk about a gold mine of information.
Yeah.
But beyond gathering data, did they actually disrupt any attack?
Oh, absolutely. Imagine thinking you fished a high-value target only to realize it's all fake. That's got to be frustrating.
I'd say. I bet that slowed them down a bit.
On average, it took attackers about 30 days to realize they'd been fooled.
A month. That's a lot of time they could have been using to target real victims.
Exactly. So Microsoft wasn't just gathering intelligence, they were actively disrupting cybercrime.
It's like the saying goes, know your enemy, but in this case, it's more like become your enemy's enemy.
Right. And the best part is this approach helped them catch all kinds of attackers, from small-time crooks to organized crime.
Even the big players were falling for these honeypots.
It happens. It just goes to show how sophisticated these traps really are. And the best part is they're sharing what they learn with the rest of us.
Because knowledge is power, right? But for those of us on the front lines of cybersecurity, what are the big takeaways here? What can we learn from all of this? So they're turning the tables on these attackers, which makes me wonder, what can the average IT person, someone like me, learn from all this?
The big takeaway is being proactive, not just reacting.
Okay, so instead of just trying to build stronger walls,
Right, like we saw with that dangling subdomain, vulnerabilities can pop up anywhere.
it's like you're always playing catch-up.
Exactly. It's about anticipating those moves, thinking like an attacker.
So that's where honeypots come in.
Yeah, you're creating a controlled environment where you can study how attackers operate, see what tools they're using, and then, boom, countermeasures.
So it's not just about reacting to threats, it's about getting ahead of them. But honeypots are just one piece of the puzzle, right? What else can IT pros, especially those of us in cloud environments, do to up our security game?
Threat intelligence is key. You gotta know what vulnerabilities are out there, the newest attack vectors, the tactics these guys are using.
Stay informed.
Absolutely. Subscribe to threat intelligence feeds, join security communities, go to conferences even, just to stay in the loop.
It's like learning the enemy's language.
Exactly. But, and this is important, even with the best tech, you can't forget about the human factor.
Oh, right. Because all it takes is one wrong click on a phishing email.
Exactly. We need to make sure everyone knows how to spot those threats, practice good cyber hygiene the whole 9 yards.
It's like you wouldn't send a soldier into battle without training.
Right.
So, to wrap things up, it seems like Microsoft's honeypot strategy is a good lesson for all of us in IT.
Definitely.
By being proactive, like you said, understanding how attackers think, and setting those traps, we can better protect ourselves.
It's about constantly learning, adapting, and evolving your defenses.
I know about you, but I'm feeling a lot more prepared to face those digital bad guys. Until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, and stay one step ahead.